Do I need to put more concealer on under my eyes?
No, I think that's what it is. Your makeup's so good it hides the visuals that say this person is exhausted, and so you just look really bored.
Oh, or do I look autistic?
There's also that, yes.
Maybe it's okay if I look autistic.
That would be novel. We get to look like ourselves. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
That's the thing. Can you do it without feeling totally self-conscious?
I can't do anything without feeling totally self-conscious.
That's a good point. That is a good point. It's like, don't do a spit take into the expensive recording equipment. Try to get that back into the cup.
Which is extra impressive because that's a sippy cup.
Yeah, that was not easy to do. That was not easy to do. Props to both of us on that one, I think.
What do you think? Should we make a podcast?
Let's make a podcast.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast, the show where potential went to die. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I am your other host, Jessica Michaels, and I use she, they.
And today we are talking about tossing. Now, we're talking about the scorched earth method of dealing with doom piles, which is tossing. So think
Mm-hmm.
you have too many tabs opened in your browser, so you just close the whole thing. It's
And let
that.
the chips fall where they may. The consequences be damned.
Good luck, everybody, including me. Yeah. It's well. First of all, I don't think I'd heard we're doing an article about something that Katie Soros said. We'll link the article in the show notes. But first of all, they had the acronym for Doom Pile, which was didn't organized, only moved, which, as far as personal attacks go, that's that's cruel.
Did
But
that get you
also,
right in the soul, that one?
I I'm going to pretend that I did this for the show, and great for an audio medium. Foley. Giant pile of cables need to be un un unrats nested, and then giant pile of cables needs to be untangled, put away. Uh, Other bag of supposedly sorted cables. Soundproofing tiles, of which I needed one. Let's see, over here we got half my lunch, got an electric drill, a couple of books, regular notebook. I think this is a Halloween decoration, and I'm not sure why it's on my desk, but it is. And then above me, there's shelves, and there are one, two, three, four bins over there. One, two, three bins over there. I know what's in two of those.
Well, I have a pile of papers.
Oh.
I have bin full of stuff to be sorted. And you can't see, but behind me, I have another bin labeled miscellaneous. And
I know
miscellaneous is just a doom pile with a label.
there's at least two bins behind you that say desk miscellaneous, and I know this because I've rummaged through them to steal things from you.
Yes.
By the
So
way, if you need
yes.
your post-its back, I just found them.
So yeah, I am also a follower of the doom pile methodology, but that is not uncommon for people with ADHD, and we both have ADHD. And I think anybody with executive function challenges, so that whether you're gifted or dyslexic or anywhere within the neurodiversity pie, I think I could see this coming into play. But one of the things that happens specifically with ADHD is this out of sight, out of mind idea. So where other people may look and see just messes, a messy desk, messy piles, there's actually a reason that they're there, and that is because if things are in a pile, they are still visible. You know, we keep this stuff out so that it is something that still has a place in our mind. So if something is important, it doesn't go, in a file where I'll never see it. It goes in a pile because I have to keep the important stuff out and near me. So if say you had a bill, a paper bill, and you put a bill in a file labeled bills, for some people, for mainly neurotypical people, that might be just fine. But for a lot of neurodivergent people, that would mean that thing is never getting looked at ever, ever again. If you're ever a person who says, well, every time I clean or every time I organize, then I can't find anything, you might be neurodivergent because that means that once things are away, they're hidden from your view, then they're just not things that occur to your brain, as far as existing anymore. So there is a reason for all of this. And it isn't just that we're untidy people, it's that we know that this is a way to keep things relevant in our day-to-day life.
Oh, see, I thought I just suck.
Turns out you are not a terrible person. Sorry.
I reserve the right to have that reviewed by an independent panel. I am the worst, and I'm aware of this.
I have spent years building up my argument for being the worst.
But the out of sight, out of mind thing is literally what I'm doing with this pile of cables, because we have various bins in which we put cables. The problem is you live with a crazy tech lady, and so we have lots of kinds of cables.
Mhm.
And they're sorted, but they were sorted like a year and a half ago. And things have happened since then, and people have needed cables, and you pull one out or you find one and you just kind of put it in the bin because I'm not going to look through all of these to find the right big Ziploc bag. So we've got, USB-C to USB-C, USB-A to USB-C, HDMI, display, power cables. There are not big long LAN cables anymore because I've wired our apartment a lot.
At this point, I think you're just making up letters. I don't know that all of those exist.
Oh no, they all exist. And if you really want, I could tell you that stands for Universal Serial Bus Type A, first developed in I think the
Yes,
late 80s.
but can you tell me what you had for breakfast?
Yes, I didn't have anything. Oh no, I had what did I have?
Uh-huh. Moving on. Um, well, so the theme of
Wait, how
this
can we move on?
episode,
I need to know this. What did I have for
because we've been recording now and haven't actually gotten to the theme of the episode. So we've got doom piles, right? Doom piles are didn't organize, only moved. These things that are just kind of around, maybe sorted in some way. But tossing refers to when you are maybe dealing with your doom piles or your doom closets or your doom trash bags full of things. Instead of going through one by one and sorting them or dealing with them, you just chuck it all. This could be throwing it away. This could be putting it in another place where it's in storage, right? For maybe never to be seen again. It could be just donating the whole lot, whatever it is. Could be deleting all 50,000 of the emails in your inbox. It just means that it's too overwhelming to go through and deal with each thing. And so you just let it all go at once. And you're kind of hoping or assuming that especially if it's been in a pile for a long time and you haven't needed it by now, well, then there's probably nothing there you actually need. And so you just get rid of the whole thing. You just toss it all.
Yeah, it's kind of Vimesian. Uh I'll know it's important when someone starts yelling at me about it.
Mhm.
But it also makes me think of the joke about our mail being 99% junk and then 1% something that if you don't respond to, you will go to jail. And like, how do you keep up with that? You have to sort so many things. And then it's like, oh, there's that one important one. I have to really take care of that one.
Mhm. Well, part of it, I think, is that, if you have a time when you are, maybe the ADHD medication's been taken, the executive function is high, you do have the energy and focus ability to go through and deal with things individually. But what I find happens to me is that I'll be going through and I can give things one step. Like if something is something that I can deal with in one swoop, then I can do that. But if it's something I have to like enter into the computer and then mail, I'll forget it. Forget it. That's 2 steps. That's never going to happen. Or I'll put things in a pile maybe as I'll sort through my big doom pile of papers and I'll go through and get and throw stuff away, but then I'll develop a smaller pile of things to deal with later, but that I won't deal with later. They're just now in a smaller pile of things. So it all comes out of executive dysfunction, and is one of those things that you probably, most of the time, it's probably okay. But when it isn't, it can be really bad. You know, like I'm sure that everybody has a once in my life I did X. Once in my life I threw away my kid's birth certificate. That has happened to a person that I have worked with. They accidentally pitched the birth certificate. I've had people accidentally throw away passports. People have accidentally thrown away, the one stuffed animal that their child loves more than anything. It's just one of those things where when you are sort of turning off your vision to the details of things because you don't have the ability to deal with the details. When you just kind of wash your hands of all of it, a lot of times you're fine, but sometimes you're not. And that can really
Mm-hmm.
be a problem, especially if you think these doom piles are out because maybe they had some importance or there was some reason you didn't take the step to just deal with them fully. So, yeah, have you ever had a doom pile disaster, a tossing disaster?
I'm sure I have, but I try to just like deny and mitigate it of like, I don't know, it just vanished. I don't know. I don't know why I don't have that cable anymore. It's just magically gone.
Certainly, I
Um,
didn't do something to make that happen. I did not cause that to be gone. No, no, no.
Me, my own worst enemy, never.
For the consequences of my actions, no, no. I think,
No,
go ahead.
it just feels very, very familiar as a form of dealing with overwhelm. Just the thing of closing all the tabs, um,
Mhm,
which is, I guess, the digital version of tossing, and like
mhm,
those are recoverable,
mhm.
but I never recover it,
Right.
and I don't know what it is that comes back and bites me in the butt because most things just come back and bite me in the butt anyway.
Well, and I think sometimes tossing occurs at a place when you're so at your limit that even if you knew, hey, I'm donating all of Lee's clothes to Goodwill, that you knew that, and then in a few days or a few weeks, I'm really going to be upset that I accidentally donated every pair of jeans that I own, because I
Mm-hmm.
got frustrated with them needing a belt, or you would, in some of these cases, you would gladly accept the consequences because in the moment, you're done. You're fed up. So, whether it's, oh, I'm going to pitch everything into the basement because the grandparents are coming over, and that that means you're going to have to deal with them sometime and it's going to be harder and more annoying. Well, it doesn't matter because the grandparents are going to be here at 3. It's 2:50, that's just what needs to happen. Or, so those deadlines come up, or your frustration level is so high, whatever it is. I think sometimes we just accept that there will be consequences, but we don't care because right now is so dire.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That
Mhm.
makes 1000% sense. And I wouldn't understand why someone wouldn't understand that. Because of course, I'm
Mhm.
just too, I can't, I can't,
Mhm.
I can't.
Well, I think, the thing that, if this is something that my clients bring to me, often it's because they are trying to put in place a system, or they're trying to impose an ideal that they think they should do this. So people will
Mm-hmm.
have built beautiful filing systems and they will file things and then they will never use that, or they will never look at those things again. And it's because they're creating a system that they think should work because it works for other people. So it should work for them. Or I had a client whose boss told them a very specific way to set up their inbox trays and and trays of work, stuff that you deal with each day and whatnot. And they followed that so that they could show their boss that they were filing that, but that didn't work for them at all. So they had to create a second system on top of that that actually allowed them to get their work done, that involved, like their calendar and, and things like that. So sometimes we do these things because, oh, I would like to be an organized person. So I'm going to organize this way because I read in a book that this is how you organize. It's like, yes, but this is neurotypicals giving advice to other neurotypicals. And so if something out of there works for you and you can pull something that helps you, great. But you shouldn't feel bad because your everything in its place system overwhelms you and you can't use it like that. I think we think again that there's this way to be an adult. I think social media culture absolutely doesn't help when you're looking at these beautiful fridge scapings and you're looking at these
Ugh.
gorgeous, gorgeous homes with just everything just so. And you start to think that's the way that I should be or I desire to be. And it's like, but if that doesn't work for your brain, then, because ideally you wouldn't get to the point where you start tossing things and whole piles just go away because again that means two things. One, you could be missing something or losing something, but two, it means your rope is so frayed that that is the only way you can deal with things. That is your only option, and both of those are things that we'd ideally like to avoid.
So what do I do about these doom piles?
Well, I think first is taking a look at why you're keeping things and maybe setting some guidelines for yourself about when things can go into a pile. Because a lot of the things that go into piles are things that should just be tossed, or we are afraid that we might need it someday, but that someday gets so far away that we don't remember or it never comes. Technology moves on. So I think so let's look at all the cords that you have that you're keeping. First, I would think, how much technology do we have in our home right now that uses this type of cable? And do we have a better solution? For example, you mentioned like the USB to USB-C. Well, now we have USB-C to USB-C on most of our items. So maybe it makes sense to keep the older generation of cords, a few of them, because we do still have things that use them, but maybe we don't need to dedicate a lot of space to that type of cable because most of the things that we use now are on a different system. maybe we don't need 100 charger bricks, maybe we need 5, and kind of setting that out for yourself as to priority, because it isn't just physical space that it's a priority, it's mental space that is a priority too. And sometimes we don't give enough honor, I think, to mental space. It could be all right, if I need something like this in the future, how much does it cost? We live in a very tiny, tiny, tiny place. And so sometimes we think, okay, if I needed this again in 2 years, would it be easier to try to acquire one then than it would be to store this thing for the next 2 years? And sometimes the answer is yes. So I think creating some reasonable questions and answers for yourself that can help you decide, does this even make it into a doom pile? Or does this thing just get thrown away? Because yeah, you're tossing the item, but not the whole pile. But you're not keeping the whole pile either. You're actually looking at the things, individually. So I think that can certainly help.
I think also just kind of sitting here and listening to you talk and thinking about the problem, I don't need to sort these perfectly today.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is pressing. I don't need a cable anytime soon. I can just put these cables in the cable bin.
Mm-hmm.
And within the cable bin is the big Ziplocs of specific kinds of cables.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have time or energy later and not dealing with one of the 5,000 actually important things I have to do,
Mm-hmm.
I'll sort those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as soon as this is done, I'm just going to pick up that pile and put it in the bin because then the cables are in the cable bin. And if you need them, they're in there.
Well, and I think that brings up another point, which is big categories. You know, instead of sometimes when we organize, especially when I think this happens a lot with neurodivergent people because we take in so much information. So we apply a lot of information to things when we're organizing or when we're sorting or when we're trying to create, a place for things. We'll say, okay, on this bookshelf, I'm going to put psychology books here. I'm going to put business books here. I'm going to organize them by height and then alphabetically, or I'm going to do everything alphabetically by author unless it's this kind of book. And each extra step that you put in is like a barrier that you need to cross. Every time you want to put a book there, you have to hyper organize it. Well, that makes it much more daunting to try to do something with the books, and you're more likely to have a stack of books because you can't just put them on the bookshelf. You have to go through this elaborate process. So if we back up a few steps and keep the categories really broad, books go on the bookshelf, then that can keep us again from creating those extra barriers because we have enough barriers. Our life and our brains do that for us. We don't need to create more, but we often do. We use a bin system. So we have fabric bins. You can see some in Ellie's background. You can see one in my background, and then, the cube bin shelf. And those allow us a lot of flexibility in putting stuff away. So, if we label things Halloween decorations, well, then anything that's a Halloween decoration can be in one of those bins, that has that label. We don't need to then subdivide it into further categories. This is skulls. This is fall decorations. This is, whatever. Again, we can just put them away. We can accomplish the task because it takes less energy than it does applying 10 steps of organization. They're also very forgiving. Sometimes the shelves behind me, sometimes they have a lot of bins full because we just had a lot of things that needed to be in bins, needed a place. And then sometimes there's less and we use them for decoration space. There's a lot of flexibility. And I think that's a good rule for your, how you put things away or how you structure things, because the more exacting it is, often the less likely we are to deal with it. So bins are really helpful. And then I am always a big fan of the 30-second rule or the 2-minute rule, whatever it is, which is if I have a pile and I'm, going through stuff, if I can deal with it in 2 minutes or less, I don't put it down, do it right now.
In the eternal words of Tignataro, How about now? How about
How about
right
now?
now?
How about right now? And that can keep the piles from building up to the point where it hits that overwhelm point and you need to just toss to keep your sanity. So, but be nice to yourself. Yeah, everybody misses something at some point. Everybody makes a mistake here and there. Those are not moral judgments on you. Give yourself some grace. We're all dealing with a lot of things, and you're probably an adult listening to this podcast, and you've managed to go through however many years you've been alive, keeping yourself together despite of all these challenges. So give yourself some grace here or there. If there's a pile here, a pile there, you know, that's okay. That's totally fine. And if piles are the best you can do because anything beyond that is just too much, then piles can be great. Piles are awesome. I think sometimes it's just a question of meeting yourself truly where you are and not making things harder or more challenging for yourself just because you think you should. We're all probably closer to okay than not. We just don't let ourselves see that sometimes.
Stop shooting all over yourself.
Stop shooting all over yourself. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points and good methods to avoid having to dump your piles and potentially dump something important or vital. Well, I think on that note, we can probably wrap up this episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult. If you like our show and would like to support us, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and rate us on YouTube at Gifted Kid Messy Adult. If you'd like to support us financially, you can find us on Patreon at the Neurodiverse Workplace, where subscribers get access to all kinds of bonus content, curated memes, behind the scenes shenanigans, voting on future topics, and you can help keep the lights on here and at home while also helping us provide free resources and support for our fellow neurodivergent adults. If you'd like to suggest a future topic or just say nice things and give us that sweet, sweet external validation, please email us your thoughts, questions, or praise to giftedkidmessyadult@gmail.com. And you can also support us by checking out our GoFundMe to help pay for our medical expenses. There's a link in the show notes, or you can just search Jess and Ellie's Fight for Health. But until next time, take care of each other out there.
Bye.